Shalom Aleichem Rabotai, welcome to our Wednesday class, Yalkut Yosef. And today we are going to be dealing with, well, hopefully practical things that have to do with Shmirat Shabbat. But a little bit of a debt from last time. Not exactly a debt, but we spoke about giving a car to a goy before Shabbat, and we explained that according to Rabbi Vadia, as long as I did not tell him to fix it on Shabbat, even if he did, it's not my business. But the next halacha is going, and we explained that that's only in kablanut. Kablanut means I didn't hire him per hour, but rather I told him I'm hiring you to finish the job. That makes the situation easier, as opposed to if you hire him by the hour, then he definitely worked on Shabbat hours as well. But you hire him to do the job. The Yalkut Yosef is now going to tell us what is brought in the Shulchan Aruch, obviously, that when it comes to real estate, the case is different. There's another iPhone here I don't recognize. As well. I'm muting, there was a little sound in the background. So regarding the real estate, when someone is about to build your house, okay, let's say I live in Israel and I hire someone to build my house. Now, even if he's a goy, and even if I hire him bikablanut, meaning for the whole deal, I don't tell him work per hour, give me a worker from 8 to 5 every day. I tell him, you have to finish this house. Halacha is he's not allowed to work on Shabbat. But why? It's a goy, and it's bekablanut, which means I'm paying him from A to Z. I'm not paying him per hour. That has to do with stuff that are not connected to the ground. But once you deal with stuff that are connected to the ground, brings down the Shulchan Aruch that it's a problem of mar'it ayn. However, he says, if most of the city hire goyim contractors to do the work, and that's the way the work is done, there is no marit ayn, because everybody knows that a goy is doing it for you. But for me in Israel, I can't say that most contractors over here are goyim. So if I have a guy working on a land on Shabbat, it is a marit ayn. I probably assume that in Great Neck, the most of them are goyim as well. Maybe not. I know in our community a few of them aren't, so maybe not. I don't know. So it has to do with marit ayn. If the majority over there is goyim working, then you're allowed to hire him like that. But if it's in a place where the majority are not goyim, then even though it's bekablanut, even though it's not per hour, since it's an item that's connected to the ground, there's the issue of marit ayn, and you are not allowed to hire him to work on Shabbat. He has to work only in the secular days.
Dave, what if the work they're doing is not like the foundational work and it's just like interior stuff? Like
I hear what you're saying, but at the end of the day, he is working on the project, right? So everybody knows he's a contractor working in your house. Marit ayn, meaning when it looks bad, even though not everybody sees it. Once the situation is like that, you're dealing with stuff that are connected to the ground in a house. Even though he's painting, let's say, a wall, he's not building foundations right now. At the end of the day, it's connected to the ground, and that will be
right.
that's
Okay.
the criteria. Connection to the ground. Good question. If I have a maid, let's say I have 20 guests on Shabbat, and there are tons of dishes now, and it's going to be a lot of work for her to wash them by hand. Now, I want her to wash them in the dishwasher, but she has to do Chilul Shabbat in order to wash them that way. Am I allowed to tell a goya to wash those dishes for me through the machine? So we have to learn this. This is an important halacha. Again, we're going back to the Yalkut Yosef, Rav Yitzchak Yosef, that told us that it's very important for the Jews that live outside of Israel to learn the halachot that have to do with goyim. What can I tell a goy? What can I not tell a goy? I'm not allowed to tell the goy, turn on the dishwasher and wash the dishes. Because even though it's being done by a goy, but just by saying to a goy to do something, it's already a Yisur Rabbanan. You're not allowed to say. There's certain cases that you are allowed to say. We'll learn, we'll get to there. But generally, if there's let's say it's forbidden to light a fire, and I tell a goy to light a fire, okay, so the level of sin that happened right now is not going to be a level of deoraita, like as if I lit the fire, but it's still from Chachamim. You're not allowed to tell a goy to do something, and it would be forbidden. Oh, Baruch haba, Mr. Germani, shalom aleichem.
Thank you.
However, however, what is the trick? So we're looking for loopholes that are kosher. If I tell this worker, wash these dishes, and now she has a sink full of 50 dishes on Shabbat, and she says, hey, I have so much work here, it's going to take me hours. It's much easier for me to use the dishwasher. Then she would be allowed to use the dishwasher. But it's in my house, and the dishwasher, it doesn't matter. The goya is allowed to do it for herself. Is she doing it for me or for herself? Some may say she's doing it for me. No, no, no. If I tell her to do it, she's doing it for me. I don't care how they get clean. Clean them by hand. The only reason she's using the dishwasher is for her. And therefore, says the Yalkut Yosef, she would be allowed if she does it for herself. Right. Now, what happens, another case that I know of some family member that has a situation like this in the States.
Wait, sorry, Ziv, I didn't hear. So if she does it for herself, meaning you don't say anything, she
Yeah, I
just
don't
does
tell her
herself.
put them in the
Okay,
dishwasher. I said, listen, there are 50 dishes here. I expect them to be clean so that tomorrow morning we want to eat with them. If she
okay.
turns on the dishwasher, I'm not supposed to, hey, Shabbat. No, she's doing it for herself. She's not doing it for you. But she could wash them by hand. It's just going to take her a longer time. All right. What about a goy and a Jew that own a store partnership? All right. So let's say the profits are $10,000. All right. $10,000 a month. Let's make it a round number. How do they split it? How does it work? So generally, it's supposed to split 50-50. Says the Yalkut Yosef, if you have a case like that, make sure to tell the goy that all the profits of Shabbat are his, and the rest of the profits normal. What do you gain by that? If I say that to him, then let's say Sunday, Monday, and Tuesday, and half of Wednesday are mine, and the other half of Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday are his. So if when I say from up front, I have nothing to do with the profit of Shabbat, and that would be allowed. We count the profits per day. I have set days, he has set days, that would be allowed. But if I did not make that agreement with him, I said, no, he works in the store on Shabbat. I only have goyim. I'm not there physically. Yeah, but did you make the agreement that the profits are his? No. Halakha says, in that case, the profits are still his. They have to be his. So what am I losing from this? I'm losing half a day because in the beginning, I got 3.5 days. The guy got 3.5 days. One of them was Shabbat. But now, the day of Shabbat, first of all, will go to him because, and now we're splitting what's left. That's what the halakha will require us to do. And therefore, it is wiser. Sorry, my picture is jumping. I don't know why. Therefore, it would be wiser to tell him from up front that the day of Shabbat is his and the other day is yours accordingly, so that you could split the profits 50-50. But it's definitely doable. All right. Now, what about animals? Can my animal work on Shabbat? So the halakha says that the behemah, the animal, the cow, whatever it is, also there's a mitzvah of shivita, of not working on Shabbat. So it's not just me, but it says, lo taseh kol melacha ata uventecha, like your animal, right? So the animals is not allowed to work on Shabbat. Where is this relevant to? What if I have a monkey or even a very trained dog, and I want to tell this dog or this monkey, Simon, you have a dog, right? Do dogs listen to orders? Like,
Yes,
if you're going to tell your dog somehow to turn on the light, theoretically, he'll get it, or it's a she or he?
the she.
It's a she. You can train her theoretically to jump and turn on a light, no?
Theoretically, yes.
Theoretically. Well, monkeys definitely do that, and I've seen dogs are trained, right? So can I train a dog to be my Goysha Shabbat? I'm not going to say anything. He knows I want the light, this, that. What's the halacha? So says the Yalkut Yosef that even if I train him, it would be forbidden because on Shabbat, the mitzvah of resting is not just for me, it's for my animals as well. So just like a goy, maybe not just like a goy, but a goy can do it for you, and the animal cannot do it for you as well. Guys, I'm sorry about the picture.
Wait, sorry, but the cleaning lady, she also has to rest, not because she's a goya.
Okay, but she's doing it for herself, right? When we spoke about the dishwasher or whatever it was.
So is the cleaning lady allowed to turn on the light if you don't say anything?
Oh, we're getting to that. We're gonna get to a nice case where we're gonna find a loophole. How, if we want the light on for ourselves, for her, of course she's allowed to turn on the light. I have a Goya, she has her own room. She can't turn on the light in her room except for herself. You can do it for herself. The problem is when she does it for me. But hopefully today, we're going to discover a loophole of how can I get her to turn on the light for me, even though halachically it's not considered for me. So it's a good question.
Ziv, I have a question kind of on the topic, and I know the answer is no, but with new technology, your voice can turn on a light. You could say, "Hey Google, turn on the air conditioning, turn on the room." I know it's not, Mivatal Shabbat, like it doesn't look good, but why is it really a sewer if your voice?
It's a very, very interesting question. Actually, Arav Meir Eliyahu, which I always, mention that he has a series of books behind me, he deals with a lot of questions that have to do with technology and innovations and stuff like that. So he has a whole class about, giving an example about this guy he knows in Mexico that his house is all robots. Like he walks into the house, the light turns on, the coffee is ready for him every morning at 7 o'clock. He doesn't have to do everything is automatic. It recognizes when he comes into the room, this, that. So is that allowed? Can he say through his voice? He's not really doing anything physical. But halakha le'maaseh, these things are problematic. Besides whatever happens technically, let's say you avoid that, right? But there's a problem of ziluta the Shabbat. The Shabbat becomes zol, not important, not chashuv. If you're going to start doing stuff like this, where's the end? I think that the kosher switch, for example, is a very good example for this. When it was created by one of our own community members, it made a lot of noise in the world. Why did it bother everybody? Because even though there's somewhat of a halachic loophole for it, but the Haredi world was very bothered by it because it's going to make the Shabbat look very, you just push a button and the light turns on. It doesn't seem right. So Rabbi Chaim was standing behind him for a while, but even so, it didn't pass. Where is it okay? Where is it recommended? To put it in hospitals or to put it in shuls where you tell a goy to use that instead of a regular light. We did a big process. But why? Maybe you could find a way to say that halachically there's not really a problem, at least according to the Sfaradim. Now, there's something called ziluta the Shabbat. The Shabbat looks not enough in people's eyes when you're allowed to push buttons and stuff, or you talk to something and it turns on, right? So you could say maybe the Shaon Shabbat. No, the Shaon Shabbat passed. The Shabbat clock, where you set a time, you do it from up front, or even sprinklers. You have garden and you want to sprinklers on Shabbat to wash to water the plants. It's allowed because you did it from up front. But starting a process during Shabbat, that's already not in the honor of Shabbat, and Chachamim don't like that. All right. Actually, that was the next stop. Oh no, that's later on. Okay, we'll get to that. I was looking at the bottom of the page. All right, so now for the question that we asked on the chats. Can I rent out my home or a store that I own to a fellow Jew, and I know that this Jew is not Shomer Shabbat? The easy example would be my apartment. I know he's going to turn on the lights, he's going to do Chilul Shabbat, and it's in my possession. Is there a problem with that? Well, let's extend it more. What about if it's not just for him personally? What if it's a store and I rent it out to him, and instead of closing on Shabbat, this Jew opens a falafel store on Shabbat and he's selling and he's doing business, and this is all in my store. Another example, which was brought down by Rav Moshe Feinstein, it's a famous question. Everybody should know this question. A guy that owns a hall. People want to do weddings at his hall. All right. Now he knows that the guy that's going to come do the event by him, forget no one is going to do Tilat Yadayim or Hamotzi. There's not going to be tzniut. There's going to be mixed dancing. There's going to be a lot of halachic problems for, let's say, someone that is very observant. Am I allowed to do that? Or since my belief is that this is wrong, I can't shake hands with this, and I'm not allowed to rent that to a person that tells me I'm going to have girls in bikinis dancing throughout the wedding. I was like, okay, don't do, what am I obligated to do? So we'll touch all these points, Be'ezrat Hashem, and this happens, all right? I remember when one time my mom wanted to rent out something, and we called a big Rav because it was strange to us that he told us from up front he's not Shomer Shabbat and he's going to open the store on Shabbat. It didn't feel right. What the rabbi told us back then is, if you're looking for dry halacha, it's allowed. It's allowed. At the end, we'll explain why. There's a reason why it's not my obligation if he keeps Shabbat or doesn't keep Shabbat. However, says the Yalkut Yosef that if it's going to be something that he's going to do in public, then try to avoid all the heterim. There are heterim. There are reasons to allow it. There are reasons to say, it's not my business. I rented it to him. Now it says he can do whatever he wants. Yeah, but you know he's going to do it. If it's in his own, it's okay. But if it's done publicly, he recommends. He's not saying that it's asur. He says, try to be machmir. Try to be strict upon yourself not to do that. All right? Let's touch the wedding. So if inappropriate things according to my religion are going to happen in my hall, can I give the event to this guy or not? Says Rav Feinstein, you could give it to him. And this is the common denominator that I want to bring to everything over here. Why are all these things generally allowed according to the Dry Halacha? Because, says the Rav Moshe Feinstein, and brings him that people say, that that he brings it, but I remember Rav Feinstein says this as well, but definitely this is the halacha, that there's not a problem in the item itself. Your apartment is not an item of Chilul Shabbat, all right? Your store is not an item of Chilul Shabbat. The store works 6 days a week. The apartment also, everything works 6 days a week. The electricity is there 6 days a week. The AC is there 6 days a week. So 1 day a week, it's different, yeah, but it's not an item that is made for sin. Same thing with the wedding hall, said Rav Feinstein. You have a wedding hall. It's not an item that is made for sin. You have a chuppah there, right? People do chuppah. You have a little bet knesset, people pray mincha alvita. You have food. It's not automatic that when you walk into this place, this is a place of sin. If you rent out an item or a place of sin to someone, that's a problem. Because the item itself, once you gave it over, you're participating with sin. But you gave him something. It's called chefza v'gavra. I'll explain what that means, translation. Chefza or chefetz means the item, and gavra means the gever, the person. If there's a problem in the chefetz, the item is an item that is forbidden. I cannot give it to someone else. But if I give him a kosher item, but the gavra, the man decides to do something not kosher with this, that's already not my obligation, not my responsibility. Halacha l'maaseh, if I have a wedding hall and I want to rent it out to someone that will do non-kosher things in this hall, it's not my business. I'm talking about non-kosher food is already a problem because my plates, everything is going to get, it's a whole different story. You can't participate with that. But I'm saying if they are doing stuff over there that are not kosher according to my criteria, I'm still allowed to make money off that. Same thing with the store, same thing with the apartment. But says the Yalkut Yosef regarding something that is done publicly, let's say a store in a mall or something like that, better not to lean on those loopholes to give it to a Jew. Find the boy to the mall, no problem, rent it out to a guy. So that's the conclusion. What about a machine? There are automatic machines. You see a lot on campuses or even in schools. Someone puts money, gets a can of Coke. Someone puts $1 or $2, gets a sandwich, whatever it is. Can I put that in a place that for sure I can see? I know when people buy, they're going to buy on Shabbat. Or before Shabbat, they'll have to come to the campus, turn off the machine, and on Motzei Shabbat, come and turn it back on. Maybe today it's already done digitally from far away, but do I have to worry about that? What do you guys think? Anybody have an idea?
I mean, it's the same concept. No, you don't have to worry about it. The machine, it's allowed during the week, allowed all the time. If the person does Chilul Shabbat by buying the food on Shabbat, it's not your business. No, it's the same concept.
I'll tell you yes and no. What do I mean yes and no? When you look at an apartment is not rented out per day. If I was renting out an apartment per day, then and the guy that I'm renting out to on Shabbat would do it, it would be a problem because it's just for Chilul Shabbat. But when it comes to an apartment, I rented it for a whole month, and there are a few items over there that he's going to do problematic things. When it comes to this machine, it's still in my possession. No one else rented, no one else took the keys from me. So when Shabbat comes, I have the power to turn it off. It's a new day. I'm thinking out loud with you. It's not written, but I'm trying to answer your point because the Yalkut Yosef doesn't bring this. He doesn't say, "Oh, it's not."
Wait, where is the machine though? Where is the machine?
I own a Coke machine and I put it in a campus in a college somewhere. All right, and the guys sleep there. They dorm there, and on Shabbat, now obviously goyim, all right. Even goyim are going to buy, but maybe a Jew is going to buy on Shabbat. Do I have to worry about that? And that's where the Yalkut Yosef differentiates. He says that if you put it in a place of Jews or in a place that the majority are Jews, let's say you put it in YU, all right? YU, no one's going to buy this on Shabbat, but imagine a place like, Ramat Gan, Tel Aviv, the place where
the location matters, yeah.
Majority of the people are Jews. He says it will be asur. But if the city has a majority of non-Jews, then you would be allowed. So theoretically, if I have a Coke machine here in Ra'anana, the majority of the people are religious, I should make sure that this machine is not making money on Shabbat, because those are going to the majority. Most likely that the person buying is gonna be a Jew, and that's gonna be a problem. But if I do it in New York City, where the majority of people is not Jewish, even though a Jew may have bought and I may be enjoying that money, I don't know that. I go according to the majority. The majority of the people in New York City, Jewish or not Jewish, yeah, then no problem. Okay. He also talks about Shetach Yehudi. I didn't mention this, but not just if the majority are Jews or not, but also if the land is owned by a Jew, that would also be a problem. Meaning, if I put it in a campus that is owned by Jews, then already for sure I have to turn it off on Shabbat because it's in a property of Jews. But let's say in New York City, that would be the case where you have a machine over there somewhere. So you're not in a property that is owned by a Jew, and the majority of the people are not Jews, which probably will be almost everywhere over there. Then putting up a machine like that would be allowed.
Wait, sorry. So if you put a machine in one building in the city owned by a Jew, well, there is millions of people going in and out, in and out, in and out, that mostly go in. You have to shut it off on Shabbat.
So according to what the Yalkut Yosef says, if it's in Shetach Yehudi, now we have to understand a little bit what does it mean to Shetach, an area that is an area owned by a Jew, because he owns, let's say, the building, but if he's renting it out to a company or to somebody else, and those goyim are doing whatever they're doing, even though he owns it, but now that they are renting it, it's not really his. It's already theirs right now. They have the key to it. Just like when I rent out my apartment to someone, uh, everything is on him. It's halachically, it's as if he owns that. There's no mezuzah there for a certain amount of time. The guy has to put it on. No, but I don't own it. It doesn't matter. You're there. You're paying rent. So there must be gray territories to what happens when it's, let's say, in a lobby or an area that they didn't rent. It depends. It gets a little complicated. But the rule of thumb is that if it's in the territory of a Jew or in an area that the majority are Jews, it would be a problem. But if it's not in Jewish territory, and again, when it comes to rent, then usually if someone is renting it from you, then it's his territory. All right. Now, Hanhagat Tovai says, let me give you advice. Says, what happens when I'm about to cross? This happens a lot in Greatness on Shabbat. People that sadly still drive a car on Shabbat, soon will change Rizat Hashem, and I'm about to cross the street. Or even not ready. It happens in Ra'anana as well. Almost every city in Israel, sadly, you have people not keeping Shabbat. So if I'm going to start crossing on a crosswalk, I'm going to make the Jew hit the brake. And then I'm going to make him exert because he's going to want to drive. All these things, are they my accountable for them? Is it my problem that this Jew is driving that now, you know what? Maybe I should just wait on the side. You get the problem here? Every time he touches the gas, it's so many problems with that. So if I'm going to start crossing and he's going to stop because of me, I'm causing that. Maybe I should just wait on the side. And actually, he says this Hanagat Tovah. He says, you're not halachically required to do this, but it would be good if you don't start crossing, because in Israel at least, I'm sure it's like that as well in the States. Once I started to cross, the guy legally has to stop. Even though he was able to pass and whatever, he has to stop once I started crossing. He says, on Shabbat, if you see a car from far coming close, and if you know that by you starting to cross, they will have to slow down, and then accelerate obviously after, better to avoid that. It doesn't say that it's forbidden, because really the dry halacha is, it's not my business what this guy's doing. Am I doing what legally I'm allowed to do? I can't consider all those things. So he says, min adin, you're allowed to cross. Especially if he already stopped for you. Don't say, he stopped for me. Because sometimes you're in the cross, you just wait, and they stop, and they say, Rechabur. So now you're going to say, no, I don't want to enjoy that you did Chilul Shabbat for me. Says that because no, if you already stopped, you can enjoy it. You can stop. But ideally, and this is what I do, sometimes when I remember the salafa, is that once I come to a sidewalk and I'm about to cross, and I recommend everybody to do this as well, I look to both sides. And if I see a car in the distance that in the middle of me crossing it may have to change its speed, then I pretend like I'm not interested in crossing. I start walking to a different direction, or whatever it is. so that guy doesn't change the speed at all, and he keeps on driving. And then once he passes, then I go back and I cross quickly. That's the recommendation. It's not the dra halacha. The dra halacha is I'm allowed to. Al-iteu la-rasha. If the rasha wants to drive, it's not my business. But at the end of the day, these are all our brothers. If we could at least help that and not another sin would happen because of us, better. All right. What happens, says the Yalkut Yosef, if I have a Brit Milah, B'ezrat Hashem, Yabus Machot B'Yisrael, a baby was born, Brit Milah, and now, Ilan, I see you joined us as well, Baruch haba, Matin, I didn't say hello to you guys, Mashida. So Brit Milah, happy occasion. Now, what happens if the Orchim, the guests that are going to come on Shabbat, they're going to do Chilul Shabbat, right? Let's say the baby was born on Shabbat. The halacha says that you have to do the milah on the 8th day. The 8th day from Shabbat is Shabbat. We're not talking about doubts. Maybe we'll touch that at a certain point, right? But you cannot push off the berit because you're saying, oh, maybe people are going to come to shul on Shabbat, especially for this, and do a chilul Shabbat. It says no. Since the Torah says explicitly, bayom hashemini, you don't push off the berit. Unless the halacha says that the parents of the baby themselves are going to come on Shabbat with a car. If that happens, the rabbi should say, sorry, we can't do the Brit Milah on Shabbat, and we should push it off. But if it's for other guests that made Chilul Shabbat, we don't have to be concerned about that. I'll say a story in parentheses. We've said this in the past. There was a case in Sao Paulo, in Brazil, where the rabbi made a decree that any baby that has to have a Brit Milah on Shabbat, no more, only on Sunday. And he was allowed to do that. He was outside of Eretz Yisrael. He was allowed to change the halacha according to his understanding. Like we see sometimes Rabbi Chaim as well does certain things that, let's say, don't fit exactly what the halacha is, according at least to certain rabbis. But he looks at it at the greater good. The rabbis that are outside of Eretz Yisrael sometimes have to take steps to worry for the future of the community. And therefore, they're allowed to, have to have wide shoulders for that. But the rabbi at the time at Sao Paulo in Brazil, he changed the halacha that only on Sundays, because if he's going to start allowing these britot on Shabbat, so much chilul Shabbat is going to happen, and people are going to start losing anything they have left from religion. So that's what he did. So, says Yalkut Yosef, there are certain cases where the rabbi is allowed to make a gader, he's allowed to make a fence, he's allowed to change it. But really, the dry halacha is, unless the parents are going to do chilul Shabbat, you're allowed to have the brit milah on Shabbat, even if people are going to do chilul Shabbat. But if it's a brit dechuya, what is a brit dechuya? You have a brit milah that was on Shabbat, and the baby was born Shabbat. But if the baby got yellow, something happened, and they told you, sorry, we have to push off the brit by a few days, halacha says, don't do that brit milah on a Thursday or a Friday. The doctor says, you're good to do it on Thursday. It's the 10th day, let's say. But no, we don't come and do it on Thursday or Friday, says the halacha, push it off to Sunday. Why? Because the third day to the milah, which in this case will pretty much fall around Shabbat time, is a dangerous time for the baby. You know with Avraham Avinu that when the Malachim came, it was the third day his Brit Milah. That's the time where a person that has the Brit Milah is weakest. And you may have to do something on Shabbat on that third day to heal him. And therefore, says the halacha, once it's already been pushed off, wait till Sunday. Sunday comes, you could do it Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, but do not do it on Thursday or on a Friday. It says unless there's a mamash, minhag baruch, a true custom that specific community has, that they're allowed to do it on Thursday or Friday. Otherwise, project to Sunday. All right, Rabotai, we're going to stop here. See you next week, Rabotai. Chazak u'baruch.
Thank you. Chazak baruch.
Chazak
Thank you
baruch.
so much.
Okay.